This is Pod Strangely Warmed, a place where we tell the good Methodist story, where we have conversations that invite followers of Jesus to seek after that loving, just, and free world that God imagines for us all, and have a little fun along the way. Hi, we're back here in the studio for another edition of Pod Strangely Warmed after our tour of the annual conferences that feels like it's been going on for about a month now, celebrating the uniting or the upcoming uniting of the Horizon Texas Conference. As we come back into the studio today, we are recording on July 3rd, which is 2 days after official Methodist Pastor Moving Day. And I'm incredibly glad to be joined here in the studio by two Methodist pastors who are in their first week in their new place. Johnny Brower is the new lead pastor at First United Methodist Church of Hurst, and Ramiro Rodriguez is the new pastor at City Point Church in North Richland Hills. Yep. Thank you both for taking time in the first week in your new appointment to come here and talk to us. We know literally most of the time on the podcast, there's thousands of other things you could be doing. Mm-hmm. I know for sure that this week there are thousands of things you could be doing, and yet you are here. So thank you for being here today. We're excited to get to hear from you, not just in general, but to hear from your experience of this particular unique season of life and transition. And one of the things that we know we are the Methodist Nerd Podcast, and if you're Methodist very long, you've experienced that pastoral transition, either from the pastor's chair or from the church member's chair. And part of what we're hoping today is to kind of get a window into what is that experience like for you individually, for you pastorally, for your families, and then maybe how we can do this well together as churches. But before we get to all of that, we've got a new segment here on the podcast. New, not in that we haven't done it before, but new because it's got a name. Our new segment is called Self on a Shelf. And I am so excited for Self on a Shelf, and Dustin hates the name. And so if you're watching this in a place where you can comment on YouTube or on Facebook or one of the other places, just give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down on Self on a Shelf. And then we can know. We're 3 for 3 on pastors who like Self on a Shelf, but we're also self-aware enough to know that pastors and dad jokes tend to go hand in hand. And, so it may be cringy, and that's okay. So let us know what you think. Cringy? No. Self on a Shelf? Let us know.
I think it's cringy now.
It's cringy now. Okay. Well, I've lost one of my...
That's why I love it. Right, exactly. I love it. Exactly.
Right. I'm losing my votes quickly. So just let us know. And this may be the only time you've heard the word Self on a Shelf on the podcast ever. And Dustin will rejoice if that is the case. But Johnny, what have you brought to be on the shelf, to give us a window into who you are as a human, as Johnny, not just as Pastor Johnny? What'd you bring today?
I brought a football, or as we know here in America, a soccer ball that has the crest of my favorite football team or soccer team, the Arsenal from London. And so I'm a big Premier League fan. Okay. I love soccer of all sorts. I love to watch the World Cup. I love Olympic soccer. I've just grown over the last decade or so to really appreciate the sport. And so this is my favorite team. This is the one I follow. I have jerseys, or kits as they're known, all through my closet. My wife and I both love the team, and it's one of our Saturday routines is to watch the Arsenal when the season's going.
Who's your favorite Arsenal footballer of all time?
Of all time? Thierry Henry.
Oh, no.
Okay.
He's the reason I started following the Arsenal in the first place. I was actually watching the World Cup as sort of a drive-by fan, and I was really enamored with him playing for the French team, and I thought, he's amazing. What team does he play for? The Arsenal. Cool. That's a cool name. Maybe I'll follow them. And then I found out that their coach's name was Arsene Wenger, and I thought maybe the team was named after the coach. And also, fun fact, me and Arsene Wenger, legendary coach of the Arsenal, share a birthday. So it was meant to be.
It meant to be. Now, we are located here in North Texas, and we are the Central Texas Conference, the home of Texas high school football, right? Where football is played with shoulder pads and with your hands and oblong-shaped balls and helmets, right? As you jumped in to football, as it's known internationally, soccer, as we've talked about it here. What was kind of in the early learning curve for you, right? As somebody who grew up here in Central Texas and kind of, you said for about the last decade or so, you've jumped in with both feet.
Yeah.
what was part of that early learning curve, maybe besides figuring out that the team's not named after the coach and pieces like that?
Yeah, I would say, obviously, everybody says offsides. Nobody knows what it means. They just know what it looks like. If you're a fan of Ted Lasso, you know it when you see it, right? I would say the imprecision of the game.
Okay.
So they don't stop the clock when there's a foul or if the ball goes out of bounds, which we're not used to because we need to, every little millisecond's got to be counted in the replay. And also, like when it goes out of bounds and there's a throw in, they're not super bothered about where they take that throw in. Whereas in every other American sport, the referee wants to make sure they are in the exact spot that ball went out of bounds.
6 inches over that.
Yeah, they can kind of move around, walk around. If there's a foul that takes place on the field, they just kind of place the ball in the general vicinity. Okay. Sometimes they don't even wait for the referee to start the play again. They just kick it themselves and keep going. The ref's like, all right, we'll keep going,
And stoppage time is like a suggestion more than to want to stopwatch.
Yeah, stoppage time was one of the things that took me the longest to kind of wrap my head around because they say we've got 4 minutes of stoppage time, but there's, it'll end up being 4 minutes and 32 seconds or whatever, and it's just kind of whenever the referee goes, we're done.
Yeah. They've started saying on the broadcast that there will be a minimum of 4 minutes.
Right.
So that's what stoppage time means now. So there'll be a minimum of 4 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And it might go a little over depending on how much stoppage is happening in stoppage time.
Okay.
Yeah. But one of the things I've grown to appreciate about it that a lot of people have yet to experience if you don't watch soccer on the regular is a lot of people say the game is slow. And it can be, just like any other sport, it can be very slow. But how quickly the game takes place. So a soccer game is 90 minutes total, generally, but you are in and out in less than 2 hours because there's no commercial breaks.
Right.
The game just keeps going and progressing. Whereas if you watch, American football, any other sport, they're constantly going to commercial. There's constantly timeouts. They're constantly not playing the game. And it takes like 4 hours to get through a game. And so when you watch soccer, you can get in and out in 2 hours and have a good rest of the day or a bad rest of the day, depending on how your team goes.
And
But you can count on it being in that 2 hour block.
Yes, exactly.
And scores are often low, but near goals are super exciting then because scores are usually tight.
Yes, exactly. It's a lot of energy, a lot of buildup. So when something does happen, good or otherwise, there's just an incredible release of emotion because it's been like building. The tension's been building the whole game. Yeah.
Nice.
If I would have known we talked this much about football, I would have worn a blazer and talked in an English accent.
Oh, that would have been good. That would have been really good.
To another podcast.
Right. Sorry.
But those guys, if you ever want to come on and talk
that would be
talk football,
great.
come on.
That would be awesome.
I'll step out. Y'all can inhabit the chairs on this side of the table, and we'll be good. Ramiro,
yes.
Sounds like you could talk Arsenal for at least a good part of the day, but you brought something else.
I'd rather talk Liverpool, but yeah. So my daughter's 17. Emma is 17, and years ago, I'm not exactly sure how many years ago, she made this painting, and I'm like, I did not prompt her. I did not tell her, you need to make me a TIE fighter. But she just made it, and it just shows that I have done an amazing job raising my daughter.
All right.
Yes.
Now, why the TIE fighter? Why?
Well, just Star Wars in general. And, I was like 5 when New Hope came out. So Star Wars has been in my life, as it's been with many people's lives. Their whole life is Star Wars. And as a preacher, there's a lot to draw from in the Star Wars well. Yeah. And I go to there maybe too often, but I go there a lot. But it's hard not to go there when you have shows on, like when The Mandalorian first 2 seasons were on. How could I not preach about The Mandalorian? Just impossible.
Well, I think it's fun for our congregations to find those places where our passions, outside of church, kind of give us a window into and help illuminate the gospel, and maybe in a way that we've seen and heard. I know I'm a big American football guy, and college sports is my jam, and but the series that my church has loved the most from the sports end of things that we've done was Lessons from the Sidelines from when I was coaching 4-year-old soccer, right? And I'm like, I got no clue, but that season of throwing myself into a learning experience, right, provided a window into just seeing some scriptures in a whole new way and kind of a part of our life of faith in a different way. And so I love that you guys have kind of distinctive, like this is who I am outside of church, right? And it's consistent with who you are inside of church. I'm pretty sure that the Premier League has showed up in a sermon at some point along the way.
At least once, but generally because it's so odd and nobody knows what it is.
Fair enough. As you guys are moving into this new season of ministry, right? You haven't preached your first sermon at your new church yet. By the time this drops, you will have, but as we record, you haven't. It strikes me that this season is one in which part of what you're trying to do is get to know the church really well, but also help them get to know you, right? In this season. What are some kind of initial priorities for both of you pastorally as you step into this new season in a new community as you begin this time?
I think the most important thing a pastor can do early on is have people know who you are, what makes you tick, where you stand theologically. And so I've had a bit of time since my last appointment to think about what I want the first month of sermons to look like.
Yeah.
And so the first month I've made so that people are going to know at the end of the month a lot about who I am. Like, so there'll be some biographical things about going on, but there's also going to be theological things, the foundations of what I believe it means to follow the way of Jesus is going to be in that first month. So people get to know me that way. Also, I'm going to have a Bible study right away, starting the second week I'm there. And so I think Bible studies are a way for a pastor and a community to really get to know each other, because you get to be in a more intimate level than just someone preaching at you for a while. And I've also set up a time where times where people can pick slots just to get to know me in like small group settings, like 4, 5, 6, 7 people, where we just talk for an hour. So we get to over coffee, just so we get to know, you know, I get to know them, they get to know me. Because if we don't know each other, then I don't know how ministry works.
Yeah. Ministry is such a foundational, it's relationally driven, right? In a way that we've got to be in connection and relationship with each other. And that looks different in different churches, different size churches, different, different places have their own kind of ethos and a way that works out. But one of your first steps is to intentionally share and hear, right? Johnny, how about you as you jump into this new ministry at First Hurst?
Yeah, well, I would echo everything you said. I think it's beautiful. I would say maybe for anybody who is watching this in the future as an archived video, maybe they're preparing for a move mid-year or next year, I would say the beginning of starting well somewhere is finishing well where you are. If I might borrow a line from Hamilton, teaching people how to say goodbye in community where we have known and loved one another. In a way that is honoring of what we have shared, but also excited and hopeful for the future. I think that's a wonderful gift that you can give the congregation and yourself and your family as you prepare to leave a place. So not jumping too far ahead into the next place. There's going to be some of that you inevitably have to do, but make sure you're keeping your focus on loving the community you're in before you start in the community that you will be in. But other than that, other than the things that Ramiro had mentioned, I'm really trying to focus on energy. What season does it feel like this church is in as we're having these conversations? And what kind of energy do I need to bring into the room for meetings, for casual gatherings, and from the pulpit? Are we in a season of celebration? Do I need to bring, my celebration shoes? Or is it a really difficult season in the life of the church? And do I need to bring a little bit more of a healing vibe, right? What kind of vibe is needed? And how can I embody the spirit that is necessary right now in the season that the church is in? And so trying to pay careful attention to what this community needs and how can I bring that level of energy into the room and into my sermons.
Who are some key partners for you guys as you start in this work of beginning well? I love the invitation to end well, right? Because that is so clear. And, I've been blessed in every move I've had to follow folks who have ended well, right? And that is such a gift. I can't imagine what it's like for somebody to leave it in a toxic space, right? And then, you've got to do the work of getting to know people, of reading the room and kind of knowing where the Spirit is guiding the community while also playing cleanup, right? There's going to be things that, need to get picked up in the midst of things, but I think that's an incredible, important encouragement. Who are some key partners for you guys in these early days? And I know that some of this will be very church dependent, right? And situation dependent, but each of you have served on large staffs at large churches. You've served in places where you're solo pastors, but who are some kind of key relational partners that you're looking for in these early days?
Well, I mean, specifically in my context, my admin Lori Thompson, I've known her for 15 years.
Okay.
Wow.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, I love her. She's one of my favorite people in the world. And so just being able to have her there has just been amazing because
Yeah.
it just makes, getting to know everything I need to know a lot easier. And I promised I would shout him out. Jordan Kramer, who also is at City Point, has been the best. Jordan Kramer is the best.
You hear that, Jordan? You hear that? No, that's good. That's
So
good.
now-
Jordan was supposed to be on our
Yes.
Man on the Street pod at annual conference, but then had to go home a day early, and so we didn't end up recording that till later. So yes, Jordan, you'll be on the podcast sometime soon. But Ramiro's here in transition, so but you got your shout out.
But lay leaders have come up to help me
Yeah.
out. SPRC people, just like, lay people have just been so great, just really making themselves available to me for whatever I need, which is great.
That's awesome. It's a gift.
Yeah. Basically, anybody who wants
Okay.
to help,
Yeah.
I'll take it.
The coalition of the willing.
Yeah, really leaning on my family at home during this transition, making sure that we are all in this together and figuring out how we all fit into this new reality.
Yeah.
But also, your typical players, SPR chairs, admins, staff, folks like that. I found personally for me, I don't know if this is a new initiative or not. It's the first time I'm going through it, but the formation of these transition teams that our conference has helped create, Owen Ross has helped lead that effort, creating these transition teams that are outside of our normal committees, but a team that guides the pastor that is leaving and help them, say goodbye well, and also help us say hello as well as we can. Our transition team has been wonderful at Hearst and has really reached out to make sure that we feel comfortable, that we know who we need to know, as well as making sure that we know where to go to eat.
Sure.
We want to get something to eat,
Yeah.
helping us find our way around town, around the church. They have really been a key part of us finding home and welcome here in this new place.
That is a gift, and I'm so thankful that those transition teams are in place because I've done transitions without them, right? And we do our best, right? But that step of intentionality is really meaningful and important. Johnny, you mentioned your family as a part of the folks working, some of the key players in this process for you. For both of you, this is not your first itineration-related move. Talk to me about the impact on your family of saying yes to an itinerant ministry in which we say to God and to the cabinet, we will serve where we're sent, right? What has that been like for you guys in this move and over the number of moves that have made up your life in ministry?
It's one of those things that sounds all good and virtuous until you have to do it.
For sure. Yeah.
And everybody's super on board until it has to happen.
Yeah.
And I will just say it's both. It can be two things at once. It's really difficult. We agree, we commit ourselves to this itinerant system, which means that we don't have a whole lot of choice. We are asked to go, and we said that we would go, and so we do. Our families have even less choice in this matter, and so having to leave their own friends or jobs or things like that. In some cases, that's not always the case, but in some cases it is.
Yeah.
In a situation like ours, we had to move 3 hours north from where we were serving. And so it can be very hard and very trying, but it can also be so exciting as we think about all the possibilities that lay before us. And so I would say it's two things. It's hard and it's exciting.
One of the things that I'm so every move we've had has been an uprooting move, right? And, my wife in her incredible wisdom has helped us and helped my kids understand because my oldest is 13, Charlie's 13. We were thankful in this last move. Abby moved when she was going into junior high. So like everybody's new on campus kind of thing. So it kind of made that relationship piece easier. And, we both grieve the people we are saying goodbye to, but there's also God's got incredible new people for us to go meet. And when I think over the last 15 years, the number of people I've been able to kind of live life in relationship with through the itinerant ministry, right? It's an incredible gift. And there's a whole lot of folks who I wouldn't have known separate and apart from this. Or if you spend 15 years in one place, right? you're not formed by the folks you've met at each different stop along the way in a meaningful way. Ramiro, you've had a bit of a unique experience as a United Methodist pastor. You've served 4 appointments, or this is
3 appointments. One was a 2-charge thing.
Okay. So 4 churches, 3 appointments, and you've lived in the same house.
Well, we moved, but just like a mile away just because we wanted to. But yeah.
Okay. So functionally the same house.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Methodist pastors don't throw rocks at Ramiro. It is not his...
you can throw rocks at me. If it makes you feel better.
If you throw rocks right now, it'll hurt your screen. So don't do that. It is not his fault. But it does give you a unique experience, right?
It does.
And so you have had faith community uprooting while maintaining those deep roots and stability for your family. You mentioned that your daughter's 17, right? Being able to have them in the same schools and things like that. Talk to us about that experience.
Sure. It's interesting because, my daughter's 17, my son's 14. And last week, they just came back from a week-long choir tour. They were with First Arlington. That's the church I was at before I was appointed to City Point. And they're going to stay part of the youth group there. The youth group sings every single Sunday at the 9 o'clock service at First Arlington. They're going to continue to do that. City Point doesn't have a youth program per se at all. And so I think for my kids' sake, it's best for them to stay at Arlington, which puts my wife in a little bit of a limbo place because she wants to go see the kids sing every week, but she also wants to be there at City Point for me. So luckily she's gonna be able to do both of those. I feel bad for her to go to church twice a week and travel. I mean, maybe it'll be great.
Maybe she'll get one good sermon out of the
It'll probably be at Arlington. But I think the important thing is so I entered ministry 10 years ago. Yeah. And my wife, we were married, for a decade before I went into ministry.
Yeah.
And so she did not marry a pastor.
Yeah.
My kids, lived life without being pastor kids for a long, long time. And so I think maybe I'm a little bit protective of them because I understand that churches love embracing a pastor and the pastor's family. They want to love on them because that's what churches do. They're loving communities. But at the same time, I don't want my wife or my kids to be forced into more of a public role than they're comfortable with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think a lot of churches, one of the things churches can do to welcome pastors is to recognize that different pastors have different family situations. And if they can be respectful of those, know that, people aren't being aloof or standoffish. Just know that sometimes people are really introverted and just, they just aren't comfortable being the face of a church.
That's good.
One of the interesting things in different moves, right, is across our annual conference, right? We've got suburban churches, we've got urban churches, we've got rural churches, we've got kind of county seat church, we've got kind of lots of different places and spaces. And over the years, I remember when we moved into our first small town county seat church, people knew who I was, who the kids were, before we ever showed up, before the moving van had arrived, right? And this was early-ish social media, but for my 5-year-old to walk in and have people who I've never met, much less she's never met, go, "Hey, Abby, it's so good to see you." Right? The intent is hospitality, right? But the 5-year-old's a little freaked out, right? And so, how do we manage some of those kind of things, and how do we take that heart of love, right, and express it in a way that actually is received in that kind of way? So, are there any other kind of tips and tricks to help for churches to understand and experience and kind of offer that love to pastors' families as they're coming in a way that is helpful and that is understanding, right? You said kind of read the room, essentially, right? Be aware that everybody's not coming from the same circumstance, and sometimes there will be different experiences coming in.
I think we live in an era where, and maybe it's because of podcasts, but we live in an era where it's probably more because of sports on TV. We live in an era where people feel like they have to have a hot take on everything. You know what I mean? Something you either have to feel this way or that way. Everything's binary, right? And so I think churches can be very, very helpful if we enter a season together where instead of thinking, oh, I like that sermon or I didn't like that sermon, we just sit with things for a while without having to have a judgment on whether something's good or bad or whether, it reached me or didn't. Just let's just sit with things and live in ambiguity for a while and see what that does.
Yeah. I think we'd all do well to be invited into that kind of space, right? That because we are quick to offer judgment one way or the other, and sometimes that's a real hindrance in this season of getting to know each other, right? Which is foundationally what's happening here.
Oh, I like that person. I don't like that person. You say that after 5 seconds, you know?
Right. Right. And first impressions matter, but they can't be the only impression, right? As you guys enter into this first season, what are some things that would be really helpful, separate and apart from the family side, just ministry-wise, for churches to offer to their pastors who are incoming? What are some helpful pieces there? I know I've only served one church that I came in, and they were a name tag church, and it was a gift, right? Because I've got about a 3-church memory in my brain in terms of names and faces and stuff like that, and there's just a learning curve there. And I promise that I'm doing my absolute best, right? But it's incredibly helpful to be able to have the cheat sheet on people's shirt as they come into church. What are some things that have been helpful for you guys that you hope or are experiencing in this move, in this time of transition?
And I think there's so many that it's hard to really narrow them down. But I would say an openness from if you have staff, from the staff, if from the congregation as well. I have found sometimes I've recognized that if the pastor asks questions about something, it's assumed that they want to change it or don't like it.
Right.
Oh, yeah. It's coming from a place of judgment rather than curiosity.
And maybe that's on us some to make sure that we're framing the question that expresses simply the curiosity and the desire to get to know the church and the history of the church and the legacies that exist in the room. Because I think that's important for us to honor as we come in and progress toward the future. But I think a general openness and curiosity to different personality styles and how people receive the overwhelming hospitality that is so good and wonderful, but not to be offended if somebody is not ready to receive all of that in the way that you want them to receive it. But just kind of a general openness, I think, and to each other as we learn one another. And maybe putting aside a lot of the suspicion whenever we ask questions about things, and really more, this is about curiosity and hope and getting to know one another. So I would say just a general openness, I think, is really helpful, and it has been the case for me so far, and I've really appreciated that.
That is a gift. Absolutely. Ramiro, how about you?
I mean, we're United Methodist, right? So usually the answer is grace.
Which one?
I'm sorry. If you're a kid in Sunday school, the answer is Jesus. But otherwise, when you're an adult, just the grace, the love, the unconditional love that comes from God. If we have that as people in churches, if churches look at their new pastors with grace, if churches look at each other with grace as people welcome the pastor in a different way, like if we just look at each other as people who are all striving to perfection, and we're not there yet, but we're striving to get there. If we just have grace with each other, I think that the vibe that Johnny is so interested in will be better.
That's right.
Extending that grace, and receiving it, along the way. Flip the question. You kind of hinted at this a little earlier, Johnny, when you talked about if pastors are looking at this thing archived in the future. But for your colleagues, right? What wisdom have you gained in your moves that you would recommend somebody kind of just have in the back of their mind if they're facing a move come January or next July or at some other point in their transition period? What piece of wisdom would you offer to them?
So a long time ago, I heard a sermon that changed my life, and it was called Seers, S-E-E-R-S. And the main point of the sermon was, if a pastor comes to the pulpit and doesn't have a vision that they are inviting the church into, then that pastor is going to the pulpit with nothing. So vision's important. But then recently, like a couple weeks ago, I heard that, vision's important, but availability, with vision without availability is worthless pretty much. So I think that what we have to do as pastors is show the vision that we have, and hopefully it's going to be a glimpse into the kingdom of God. Because if the kingdom of God isn't our vision, then maybe we should go to the eye doctor, because that's what we got to have our eyes on.
Amen.
But we also got to let people know not that they're loved, but that we're going to be there to love them. We need to be, we need to say we're going to be available, and we have to be available. We have to be there for people in the highs and the lows, in their struggles and in their joys, because that's our job. Our job as pastors is to take people to a better place, to a greener pasture.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't even remember what the question was, but I just...
No, but the pastoral tip.
Yeah,
pastoral tips in transition.
You just got to preach.
I just started talking.
That's good.
I haven't preached in like 4 months, so
Look out, City Point. It's coming.
something's coming.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Some vision and availability is
Right.
coming.
It's coming.
Right.
I would say, as we itinerate, especially if you have had to uproot, I know, depending on how your appointment was, and the excitement of the move that is coming, I know we have a lot of feelings wrapped up in that, and so I don't want to dismiss those feelings. So if it is a particularly difficult move, you're leaving a difficult appointment or going into a difficult appointment, I do think it's critical that we have people that we can talk to about that. If you have a counselor, please talk to them. If you need recommendations, ask your DS, get somebody to talk to process that, because that must be processed. Otherwise, that's going to spill out onto the congregation that you end up in.
Yep.
But I would say, assuming that we're doing that, I think one of the best gifts that we can give a congregation that we're moving to is loving them.
That's it.
I truly believe, and maybe this is a little Pollyanna of me, I truly believe that if a pastor loves God with all of their heart, and their ministry, their sermons, all of that is simply an overflow of an authentic relationship with Christ, if they love God with all their heart and they love their church, I think anything is possible.
Amen.
No.
I think if we can just live into it, not controlling outcomes, not trying to define fruitfulness, if we can just be faithful people, God will bear the fruit through the Holy Spirit. And so I think when we come in, and all with the best intentions, we're coming in with like, ooh, we're going to do this. I have this idea. I'm listening to this. Ooh, this is like some low-hanging fruit here. This is a quick win. And that's all good stuff. But I think if we are focusing on our prayer life, if we're focusing on being authentic, real, faithful, disciplined Christians with our congregation, and we love our church, we love the local. Yeah. You know, we eat at the places that people eat at. We know the street names. We know what's going on inside of the church and why that picture's hanging there and why that cross is over there. We know some of the saints of the church, the schools. If we start to know those things as early as we can and express a true, authentic love for where we are, I think anything is possible. And so I would say as quickly as we can, learn to love where you're at. I'm going to assume that we are loving God already. So learn to love the local.
If not, we need to talk. And Johnny, as you were talking, I think one of the expressions, you asked the church to have a spirit of openness, right? And openness to the curiosity of the pastor. And I think pastors, we need to have that same spirit of openness and listening. Like one of the ways that we love people well is listening to their story, right? Our job coming in is not to make our new church the Daniel Hawkins best version of this church, right?
Right.
It's to partner with them and with God to meet the mission field and not have some predetermined outcomes, to not have prejudged pieces, to listen incredibly well and help them be who God is inviting them to become, right?
Absolutely.
And part of that means like in our ministries, right? The churches we serve and how we serve them, it's going to look different from place to place to place to place to place. We can't have just a one single playbook. This is what I do, right? Because each church is different, each community is different, and if we love them well and we're open to what God is doing in that place, it's going to take different forms and expressions, and there's going to be, you know, I'm sure at the end of our ministry career, we're going to look back and go, man, if I could take this piece from here and this piece from here and this piece from here, we'd like build some perfect church or whatever, right? But that's not the goal, right? The goal is to be a faithful church, right? That meets and transforms people in the midst of this.
One more tip on pastors with new appointments. Realize you're not alone. Like the thing is, the three of us are neighbors. Our churches are close together. And so what I would like to see pastors getting together, not just to do ministry together, but just to be with each other, to talk with each other, to get to know each other, to help each other out, and to like, you know, cheer for like their accomplishments. I think that us building a relationship with each other is important. So. You're gonna have coffee with me soon. You don't know.
I love it. I can't wait.
Ramiro, I'm down. Johnny's competition, but I'm down. I'm down too. No, but one of the things that I think that invitation is incredibly important, right? And one of the things I love in this season of being United Methodist, everybody who's United Methodist today wants to be United Methodist, right? We're here on purpose. We've chosen to be here. And so that sense of collaboration, that sense of openness, that sense of working together for God's preferred future is one that we're, really, it'd be really important to remember and hold on to and not get lost in the busyness, right? Because the first year, busyness can be, for every minute you have in the day, there's going to be somebody who wants you somewhere, right? And minding that, right? I will name as a kind of personal family tip, right, for pastors, as somebody who's goofed this up, right? We can want to be available to the church so much that we get to know them and they get to know us and all of that, that we also have to make sure that we're carving time to be available and present for the people who've made the commitment to itinerate with us, whether they signed up for it at the point of marriage or signed up for it after 10 years and go, now wait, what? April thought she was signed up to be a professor's wife and we were going to have this radically stable life. And I'm like, well, guess what? We're going to move 17 times over the course of the next 35 years. Like, I know you like to plan, but we've sort of said yes to this thing. There is no planning. And so being mindful of and intentional about how am I maintaining not just my connection to the new church, but also to my people who I'm going to work through life with together. So thank you both so much for taking time in the midst of this first week. Know that we are in prayer with you and for you. Know that we are in the same neighborhood. And Ramiro's right. We would do better to have coffee together on a consistent basis. And we've got some amazing churches in the HEB, North Richland Hills, kind of mid-cities part of the world. So I hope we do that. And I hope we do that some more. If you've got a vote on Self on a Shelf, make sure that you put that in the comments. Yay, nay, cringy, wonderful, somewhere in between. I'm going to put this in so much that if Dustin wants to edit it out, he has to work really hard to edit it out. And until next time, I'm Daniel Hawkins, and this has been Pod Strangely Warmed. This has been Pod Strangely Warmed. If you enjoyed our conversation today, know that you can find us anywhere you find podcasts. On Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, any and all the places, we are there. So if you want to continue the good United Methodist conversation that you've been a part of today, find us, like us, rate us, review us, and share with a friend so that the good news that is happening right here in our own midst can amplify even more.
Charlie's doing a good job of mastering the courtesy laugh when folks that are much older than him tell him things that he's like, I think this is supposed to be funny, and so I think they're telling me a joke right now, and he does a little. He does a little. It's so fun to watch.
Oh, that's good. That's awesome.
That's good. He reads cues.
He said self on a shelf. Yeah. I'm supposed to chuckle. Okay.
He's trying to be funny.
He's trying to be funny.
That's a good one.
Yeah, right.
Good one, Dad.